Hey everybody, it's been a while. Good to see there's already some people in the live stream here. We're just gonna let people slowly trickle in. Today we're gonna be talking about the Tour de Mont Blanc and some questions that you guys have asked me, as well as if you have any questions, you can drop them in the live chat as well, and we'll get to those. And if we still have some time, if everyone's sticking around and interested, then we can just go over some general questions that anyone might have. Let me know if the audio's working okay and the video's going well. Let me know how everyone's doing in the chat. Just gonna let people come in here. We're gonna be talking during the the Q&A. We have a bunch of questions about gear for the Tour de Mont Blanc, so we'll be talking about that. Some of the planning of the trip, which is gonna apply to basically any trip, really. If you want tips on how to save money when planning a trip, how to plan how long the day should be, that kind of thing. I'm going to be talking about that with the Tour de Mont Blanc kind of as a backdrop and example, but overall everything's going to be applicable to any trip that you might want to go on. So I think there's going to be a lot of good information here today. And then, like I said, if you guys have any questions, throw them in the live chat and we'll get to those. Hey Al, Frete Condrul, Matt from Okotoks, just down the road from me. How's it going? Hey Nick, yeah, the trip. So, like I said, we're talking about the Tour de Mont Blanc that Steph and I did. A little bit of background for it as people kind of trickle in. It's a 100-mile loop that's in Europe. It goes through, it starts in France, or you can start anywhere, I guess, but we started in France, goes through France, Italy, and Switzerland. It's really cool because you get to experience those three different countries, and there are some kind of nuances with the trail as well as the towns and refugios that you go through. And it was it was an amazing trip. Steph and I had some issues going into it. If you guys watched the videos, I was struggling. I had COVID right before the trip, and basically a couple days before we went on the trip, I was cleared as far as the isolation requirements and tested negative and everything, but I was still struggling with some of the after effects of COVID on that trail, and it definitely impacted the first few days of that trip. And then Steph had some Achilles problems, Achilles tendonitis that she was dealing with over the course of the trip. So there's definitely some adversity that we had to deal with, but it was an amazing trip, phenomenal. It was a good way to cap off a 4-week kind of Europe trip that we were on, where Steph and I got engaged and went to another friend's wedding and just had an amazing time. Definitely weren't in the best shapes of our lives going into the Tour de Mont Blanc, drinking lots of wine, eating lots of cheese, but it was amazing. Got 34 people in here. Hello everybody. Rosario from London. Eddie, hey Eddie. Kayla. Yeah, I definitely recommend the Tour de Mont Blanc. Put it on your bucket list. It's one of the top trips out there. What's really cool about it is you hike around kind of the little Tour de Mont Blanc mountain range. I'll pull up a map here, and we can kind of share a screen. So here's a map of the Tour de Mont Blanc. That's what the live stream is going to be about, the Tour de Mont Blanc today. Tour de Mont Blanc today. For those of you who are just joining, we're going to be doing a Q&A. A lot of the questions are applicable to basically any long trip that you want to go on, how to save money on the trip, how to plan your days. But you can see here's Europe, here's France, and here's the Tour de Mont Blanc. You can see the loop here. We started just west of Chamonix, down in this area, and then we hiked counterclockwise. So here's kind of the Mont Blanc range, and you hike around it. And what's cool is you hike kind of across the valley from it and get some amazing views of the mountains on the other side of the valley, and you feel really close, which is amazing. It's just an all around really cool trip. Highly recommend it. But let's just jump into some of the questions. And if you guys have any specific questions, just kind of save them until we go through some of the pre-questions. Maybe your question's going to be answered in the 9 questions people have already dropped. And if you have any specific questions for Steph, let me know. She's in the green room ready to come in if you guys have any questions for her. But Bryce, let's kick it off with a question about price and saving money on trips. Bryce asks, other than camping versus staying in refugios, so for those of you who aren't familiar, refugios are like mountain hostels, and there's dozens and dozens of them in the Mont Blanc area. and a lot of them you stay in bunk rooms, and they will provide your meals for you, but they are quite expensive, especially in Switzerland. It's crazy how expensive Switzerland is. But if you're a good way to save money right off the bat is to camp instead of staying in refugios. There are a couple spots as you go through Italy where it is tough to camp, just with the rules around camping and everything. But in order to save money, I think I'd avoid eating in restaurants as much as possible, especially in Chamonix. Chamonix is really, really expensive as well, and Switzerland's really expensive. And so if you can kind of have your meals prepared or go out, get some food from the grocery stores. You go through a lot of towns, and all the towns have little grocery stores, so definitely pick up your food from there. As well as if you're coming from somewhere else, bring some stuff with you, some of your snacks, maybe some freeze-dried meals. There is a Decathlon store right in Chamonix, and that store has a lot of awesome stuff. And the freeze-dried meals aren't actually that expensive in Europe, so you can use those, but yeah, I think the easiest way is to camp versus staying in refugios and then not eat out too much. Bryce had another question about how long he recommends people take to do the trail, and if Steph and I felt rushed at any point. And we did it in 8 days. A lot of people that we met on trail were doing it in 10 or 11 days. And that, I think 10 days would be a really nice amount if you still wanted to push yourself sometimes, but also wanted to really enjoy the trail and not feel rushed. 10 days is a nice sweet spot. If you're really in shape, you can do a lot faster. There's an ultra marathon that goes around the entire Tour de Mont Blanc that people do in 24 hours. So you can do it very quickly, but there's a ton of straight up elevation gain and then straight elevation down, and that just takes a big wear on your body. Steph W, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And that's an awesome sticker with the weightlifting there. That's cute. But we didn't really feel that rushed at any point. I think in the beginning, like we always had full days, but we were never kind of pushing it to try and get to camp by a certain time. We always arrived at camp right when we kind of wanted to. We had time to stop for beers along the trail a lot. That's a really cool part of the Tour de Mont Blanc, is where there's a lot of little spots at the refugios and whatnot where you can have a beer and just kind of relax a little bit. But 10 days, and it really depends on who you are and what your fitness level is. Just always be aware of what the trail conditions are going to be like. Read up about that. This is probably one of those trips where I did not plan enough, and I didn't really know what we were getting into day to day. We kind of were flying by the seat of our pants, and luckily it all worked out. I'm pretty confident in being able to kind of adjust on the fly with things like this, just having done so much traveling as well as backpacking trips. So it all worked out. But if you're not used to that kind of travel style, then definitely do your research. And for those of you who are asking questions, if you can kind of save them a little bit here, I'll scroll up and try and get to them. But for those of you who are just arriving, up to 57 viewers now, we're just doing a little Q&A about the Tour de Mont Blanc, a trip that Steph and I did in Europe a few weeks ago, getting through some questions that you guys have, as well as just generally talking about some gear, and maybe we might get into some trips that are coming up as well. Some of my plans for the future, especially with international travel. So I think we'll cover a wide gamut of stuff here. Doug asked, did you go up to the Aiguille du Midi and enjoy the views? Chamonix is also beautiful in the winter. So Steph and I were supposed to go up to the Aiguille du Midi, and that's a lookout point basically next to the Mont Blanc peak, and you can take a gondola up there, and we were supposed to go up there as part of our kind of pre-trip travels. So for those of you who aren't aware, Decathlon sponsored this trip by helping with some of the costs of the trip. So they helped paid for some of the logistics, as well as provided a bunch of the gear. We didn't actually get paid to do the trip. They just helped cover some of the costs, and I really appreciated that from them, because it is an expensive trip. It's expensive to go to Europe. It's expensive to travel around France, Italy, and Switzerland, and it was really nice of them to kind of to help out with that. And Decathlon's an amazing company. Their outdoor headquarters is just outside of Chamonix, so that's where all their design work is happening. They're designing the backpacks that you see me reviewing, the down jacket you see me reviewing, and it was really cool to kind of to go visit their design headquarters. But part of that pre-trip thing with visiting Decathlon and Chamonix was to go up but we didn't get to do that because of the COVID. So that was a long way to say no. And Chamonix is beautiful in winter. I'd love to go back and visit Chamonix in winter. I'm a big skier, and I'd love to get some skiing in there. Steven asks, how much would it cost to enjoy a trip like this minus the airfare? So permits, lodging, food, alcohol. There's no permits for the trips. That's a really cool part of the Tour de Mont Blanc is you don't need a permit to hike the trail. If you're willing to camp, all you really need is your reservations, whether that's camping reservations or refugio reservations. That's the only kind of limiting factor for you. So that part's really cheap. The lodging and food gets really expensive. The refugios, if you stay in a refugio every night, which is something that you can do if you want to not have to carry a lot of your gear with you and not have to cook. If you do that, you're probably looking at like $1,500 US for like a 10-day trip. And then if you're going to be camping most of the time and bring your own food, then that price can drop down to like $500 US. And that the euro's at par right now, I think, with the US dollar, so it'd be about the same in euros. Let me take a couple questions from the chat here. Keep you guys in here. Let's see. Isabel said you went through the gear that worked for you in a previous video, but did you experience any gear failure on this trip? I don't think so. Steph and I were talking about this as we were on the trail, trying to think about what wasn't working for us. And generally all the pieces of gear worked for us really, really well. I think some of the pieces of gear were a little bit heavy. Our tent was a little bit heavy. Our sleeping bags are heavier than quilts, but both were generally light pieces of gear. We probably brought too much clothing. I wasn't sure what the conditions of the mountains were going to be like, but it ended up being very warm. So no gear failures. Everything worked well. The biggest failure is probably our bodies. Our bodies kind of failed us on this trip. Sitka asks, how often do you replace your smart water bottles? So I brought a smart water bottle from North America and use that on the Tour de Mont Blanc. And I replace them probably about once a year is probably how often they get replaced for me. But when they start seeming really gross, that's when I'll replace them. Hey Evan. Evan's in the chat. Evan's a channel member, so if you're ever looking for a way to support the channel, that being a channel member definitely helps out a lot. And when I'm going through comments and stuff, I always kind of I make sure to answer the channel member questions first, and sometimes I get quite behind on comments and questions from you guys. So if that's just something that I try to do for those guys. Let's get into some more questions from people. Steph asked, were there places to wild camp near all of the refugios? And for the most part, there was. In Italy, you can only wild camp under I'm pretty sure this is the rule, under 2,500 meters of elevation, and above 2,500 meters of elevation, and then it has either that or you have to set up after dark and take down before sunrise. But otherwise, yeah, you could camp the entire trail if you wanted to. And Steph also asked if we recommend the Col de Four and Fenêtre d'Arpet variants. So they're two those are the two most popular variants. They're places on the trail, and I'll pull up the map here. So the Col de Four is this one. So there's a little kind of shortcut here that is in the Alpine, and it's nice. I highly recommend it. I think it's a lot easier and it's shorter than going around the other way. And then the Fenêtre d'Arpet is on the other side, and this was our longest day, hardest day. 30 kilometers, 2,000 meters of elevation, and that instead of kind of going lower elevation down here, you cut into really high elevation and go through this pass right about there. And I highly recommend that as well. Some people that I ran into who have hiked the trail multiple times said that it's the most beautiful part of the trail. I would probably argue that, but it's definitely top 3. So it's a really beautiful part of the trail. So I definitely recommend both of those variants. JG asked, what light sun jacket with hood were you wearing on this trek? So I was wearing the Outdoor Research Astroman hoodie. So that's my go-to hoodie. I wear that basically every backpacking trip. You guys will see it. It's the blue one. And it's just an awesome hoodie. Keeps the sun off of you, keeps the mosquitoes off you, UPF 50, and doesn't stink too bad either. Bryce asked, is Decathlon working on a one-person trekking pole tent? So I think they already have one. I don't think it's available in the US yet, but let me pull up the UK site here for you guys, because they are definitely, I'm pretty sure they have a one-person trekking pole tent. It uses 2 trekking poles, so just trying to find it here, and isn't super lightweight as far as trekking pole tents go, but it's their Trek 900. It's part of their Trek 900 line. So if it's not on their website and I'm not seeing it, so this might have actually just been something that I saw in Chamonix at the Decathlon design headquarters. I was walking around where all their designers are, and they have some gear that they're designing out, and I saw a one-person trekking pole tent. I thought it was for sale because I have a 2-person version for sale, but it doesn't look like the one-person version is out yet. So yeah, they are working on a one-person trekking pole tent. They said I could talk about anything that I saw that was outside of the secret basement room that I was in. So that was a cool aspect too, getting to see some of their more prototypey gear that's coming out soon that they don't want to share. And HM asked, are there limits on how many can do it? Do you need permits? Nope. Anyone can do it. You don't need permits. You're limited by the campsites and the refugios. And then same person, did you luck out on weather, or was this the norm for that time of year? So I think we lucked out on weather. It was warm. We also didn't have a lot of snow for the beginning of July, end of June, beginning of July, and it didn't get any rain really. So I think we lucked out on weather. You can definitely have a lot worse weather. We had sun every day, and it was, if anything, it was a little bit too warm. It got pretty hot. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. That's all the questions that people asked in advance of this live stream. I know I didn't give you guys a ton of opportunity to ask questions. I just posted it around noon, but I had a window in my schedule, busy schedule this summer, and wanted to hop on a live stream. There's going to be a few more. I think I'll probably have another one next week just for channel members, where I'll kind of talk about some of the filming gear that I use and how I film on trail. I've been asked by a lot of the channel members to talk about that. Let's jump into some questions. How sketchy is, Laurel asks, how sketchy is a descent from the Fenêtre d'Arpet? Yeah, it's a little sketchy. There's definitely a lot of hands-on. Like you might want to be putting away your trekking poles so you can always have at least 2 or 3 points of contact as you're going down the big boulders. There's some parts of the Tour de Mont Blanc that are definitely not for the faint of heart, but it's definitely worth it. And if you're used to any sort of like mountain hiking, you'll be fine out there. Just Steve asks, what is behind you hanging on the wall door? So that's a rack of shoes. So I can give you a better look at that. Yeah, so that's just a lot of the hiking shoes that I have. I just keep on that door because we don't have Steph and I are just in a 2-bedroom condo. I don't have a ton of space here for storage, so I'm getting creative. I can actually probably zoom out a little bit more, and you can see I have all these backpacks along the roof here, and that basically there's shelving lining the entire ceiling of the room. So lots of storage, kind of creative storage in here. Andrew asks, I realize you had some pretty rough days on the trip. What would you say the overall skill level someone needs to complete this trip? I think anyone who has a basic level of fitness and hiking experience can do this trip, because you can do it so many different ways. You can skip the really hard sections. There's buses that take you between towns. There's alternate routes that take you around really hard sections. And you can, as long as you plan to give yourself enough time. So if you need 12, 14, 15 days to do the trail, then just plan for that. But because it's so flexible and there's so much infrastructure and support, I think you could have a pretty low skill level and do the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is a really awesome aspect of it. The jazz enthusiasts, will you get a drone for filming? I had a drone and then I sold it because I just wasn't using it very much. There's not a lot of places I can use it in the Canadian Rockies here. Alexander, thank you very much for the super chat and the congratulations. You're asking a question, why did you go from ultras, topos to Hokas? Have you tried the Ultra Olympus? Speedgoat 5s in wide are tight for me. So I started off with ultras because I really liked the wider toe box that the ultras have, but I found that they were not super durable for me and were falling apart after a very short amount of time. I went to the topos because they have that wide toe box but are also really durable, but I found them a little bit overbuilt. So they didn't really hit that sweet spot for me and didn't really have the kind of cushioning that I was looking for long days out of a shoe. And that's where the Hokas came in. You have the super cushioned sole of the Hokas, especially with the Speedgoat series. And I just find them very comfortable. They fit my feet perfectly. And I attribute them to be able to hike about 15 to 20% longer than I would with any other shoe. I have not tried the Ultra Olympus. I have the Ultra Mont Blanc. Ironically enough, I probably have 200 kilometers on it now. I'll probably be putting out a review pretty shortly here. It's more of a lightweight version of the Ultra Olympus, and it's been great. Other than the fact that it's a little bit looser in the heel for me than what I'd like. It doesn't fit my foot quite as well as the Speedgoats, but for some people it's going to be a great option, and I'm sure the Olympus are too. I just think, especially the Speedgoat 5, the Speedgoat 4 probably had average durability. The Speedgoat 5, I have on my first pair here, I have over 500 kilometers on them so far, and they're not slowing down. I'll probably be able to put 600 to 700 kilometers on them, which is awesome for a trail runner. Z Muzzy, loving the storage. Might need one of those myself. Yeah. And Benji, congratulations. What do you think about the Decathlon dehydrated food? I really liked it, and Steph really liked it too, and she could be a little bit of a picky eater sometimes out on trail, and she probably heard me say that's going to run in here shaking her fist at me. But I was pleasantly surprised. They're very tasty, a lot of the right amount of calories in a small package. They rehydrated really nicely. Big fan. I hope they bring those to North America because they're also very affordable relative to a lot of the other meals that you get in Canada and the US. Hey, Devin with Backcountry Exposure here. How's it going? Yeah, Z-Muzzy, no problem talking about the shoes. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat here. If you have any specific questions for Steph, let me know. I can drag her in here. And just in regards to the shoes with the Ultra Mont Blanc, I am also testing out the Hoka. What's the Tecton X, which also uses a modified Mega Grip sole. It's the Mega Grip light base, and with that you have generally a lighter shoe and has some other interesting technology. So I'll probably be comparing the Tecton X to the Ultra Mont Blanc, and then as soon as the new Olympus comes out, then I'll be comparing that to the Speedgoat 5, because I think I love those maximal shoes. I personally will train in barefoot shoes to strengthen my foot because I think that's very important. I think feet are one of the weak links for a lot of people. So training with minimal shoes or barefoot shoes as much as you can in order to strengthen your foot is really important, as well as that, and then strengthening your glutes and calves. Like if you do those three things, you're going to be able to hike really generally easy. Alaska Adventures, do you carry a survival kit or first aid kit? I carry a small first aid kit that's geared towards the kind of conditions and the kind of training that I have. So I don't carry a bunch of stuff that I'm not trained to use, and I don't carry a bunch of stuff and this is just based on my own risk tolerance and risk assessment, a bunch of gear that I don't think is going to be necessary 99.999% of the time. as well, there's a lot of things that you have with you generally that you're carrying that you can use in a first aid scenario. And for survival kit, when I'm backpacking, my backpacking kit's my survival kit. I tell people all the time about when I'm winter backpacking that I feel way more safe on a winter backpacking trip than I do on a winter day trip, because when I'm on a day trip, I'm not carrying a full tent and like sleeping gear and tons of extra layers. I don't have 40 pounds, 50 pounds of gear on my back. Whereas if I'm winter backpacking, I can survive out there for days in pretty serious conditions. So Eddie, does Steph plan on doing more hiking videos with you? She absolutely killed it. Yeah, she's doing a bunch. We actually just went on a trip, and this video is gonna be coming out this Friday. We went on a trip with my parents and her parents. It was hilarious. It's just for the two of us and then the four boomers. It was my parents' first time backpacking, so that was really, really fun to kind of experience with them and kind of guide them along, but also see them through the ups and downs of backpacking. It was really cool. That trip's coming out Friday, and Steph's a big part of that. And then, yeah, we go on trips a lot together, but I think, and she loves being in the videos. I think what is probably going to happen a little bit more is she's going to be doing some more of her own reviews and gear lists and bringing her perspective and approach to gear to you guys, especially when it comes to some things that I just have no familiarity with, like what it's like to some of the hygiene stuff in the woods as a woman. I just can't really help you guys out with that too well. What barefoot shoes do you use for training? From Alexander. So I use Zero shoes, Xero. I have a pair of trail runner versions and then walking versions, and then I also have a pair of kind of casual slip-on versions that I just use for walking around, and I'll also probably use those for walking the dog. That's a little spoiler, that might be coming down the pipe. You guys might be seeing some dog content in the near future as well, so lots of stuff happening. I saw a good question up here from Wouter Ben Beren. What are the biggest differences in hiking culture gear you saw between Europe and North America? The craziest thing, and I'm not just saying this because the trip was sponsored by Decathlon, was how much Decathlon gear is on the Tour de Mont Blanc and in Europe. It's all the gear. That's everything. Like it's all like 90% of the gear that I saw out there was made by Decathlon, and that was just crazy to see because it's just not as prevalent in North America. And I know that Decathlon's the largest outdoor retailer in the world, but I didn't realize it was like that prevalent out there. It was pretty neat to see. And as far as hiking culture gear, the mountaineering culture is a lot more intense. It seems not intense, but there's just a lot more people doing it in that part of the world. I think Chamonix kind of is a big mountaineering hub, so that's why I think that was there. But just seeing the infrastructure around it, North America, tons of mountaineering as well, or in Canada, Calgary, where I am, Canadian Rockies, lots of mountaineering as well. It's just there's not as much infrastructure built up around it, so it's definitely different. What was the most important piece of gear for the tour? From Devin here. And what was Steph's? So for me, my most important piece of gear, I'm not sure. I think everything performed really well. I really liked the backpack, the new Decathlon backpack that's probably coming to North America this fall. It performed way better than I expected. It was really good, and Steph loved it. I lent the backpack out to my dad as well for our trip this past weekend, and he loved it. So I think it's just going to be a big crowd pleaser at a relatively low price. And for Steph, it was probably her massage ball. I think she mentioned that to me, that like she was able to massage out her calves as we stopped on trail, and that allowed her to deal with her Achilles tendonitis and keep hiking. Otherwise, we probably would have had to stop the trip a little bit earlier. Muzzy, with your question about Steph keeping pace, her and I are very similar in fitness levels, so it's not necessarily about us keeping pace with each other. We do a lot of hiking together as well as running together, so we're not far off from each other, so it's never really a problem. I think The biggest thing is probably I'm just used to putting myself in kind of some sketchier scenarios. Who's told are you going to sell merch in the future? Yeah, probably. I think Steph and my mom keep telling me that I need to sell merch, and I keep telling them, like, if you guys want to start doing that, no problem. I really enjoy making the videos, getting out hiking, so that's kind of my focus right now. If I start having some time or can bring someone on to help with that, then I'll definitely do that. Oh, here's a good question from Benji. Has your respect for decathlon gear increased? Were you surprised or impressed with the rest? I think I always knew their gear hit a really good blend of like, was always a very good value. Got a lot of performance for the price. I think what was really interesting with this trip to Chamonix was visiting their design headquarters for their outdoor gear, so where they're designing their backpacks and sleeping bags and tents, and getting to see that process. So for those of you who didn't see the kind of first couple of videos of the trip, I went to the Decathlon design headquarters and visited where they are doing all their designing and testing. So what's cool with their facility is that they have all their designers in the offices kind of the building, and then they have a series of prototyping rooms where they have people who are building prototypes of what the designers are putting together. So they're able to quickly prototype something right there without having to send it to a factory in Asia or somewhere else and then get the prototype back maybe weeks or months later. They're able to do that prototyping very, very quickly and then test it out very quickly as well. They have a bunch of testing facilities like rain room for tents, as well as they're right in the mountains, and everyone who works there is very active. When I was there, they're going on multiple groups are going out on trips and testing gear out. So they're right next to the mountains, able to test gear, and it's cool that they can design it, prototype it, test it, but then they also have a huge store right in the middle of their design offices that they can just go down and ask people, like, what do you think of this color? What do you think of this design? It's really neat that they have like groups that they can just go ask questions about right there. So I think my respect for their design process really increased, and it's crazy to me that they're able to design at that level, but then also still be able to hit the price points that they're at. So that was very interesting. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but that was a very cool experience for me, and definitely had me kind of just looking at decathlon a little bit differently. Evan, yeah, I agree. I think there's some great female YouTubers out there, and I think it'd be great to get a few more perspectives, especially from like a less intense perspective. Like there's a lot of like through hiking perspectives, but from a bit more of a casual perspective. Just if you guys have any questions, keep dropping them in there. So Reikiko, would you say your COVID recovery is going in terms of, how would you say your COVID recovery is in terms of hiking? I was very lucky, I think. A lot of you commented, and I've heard a lot of stories from other people of COVID sticking around and hindering them for like weeks or months even. For me, it was probably about day 6 where I started feeling myself, and then by day 7 and 8, I was at 90% probably, and now I still have a little kind of cough that's stuck around for the last month or so, but otherwise I got really lucky and got over COVID pretty, like the after effects of COVID very quickly, even while hiking a trail. It was probably not the smartest thing to do that, but I was triple boot, like I triple vax at that point, so I was hoping that would kind of help me out and it not be that big of an issue, and I was lucky that it didn't. Chuck, did you pre-book any or all of your refugios? So we pre-booked everything except for one night, and that night we just kind of went quickly and showed up early at the refugio, and then luckily had a spot. And that was lucky, but that's what we were able to do. Have you climbed or cable carred up Mont Blanc itself? No, we didn't get to go to the top of the mountains at all. I think I did some research into like the mountaineering mission of going to the top of Mont Blanc, and I do have like glacier travel training and ski touring training, and I'd like to get into more mountaineering, and Mont Blanc I think would be a pretty good one to do, and I'd love to go back and visit the Decathlon headquarters and spend more time kind of hanging out there and talking to designers, so that may be something in the future. Yeah, if you guys, any more questions, let me know. It doesn't have to necessarily be about the Tour de Mont Blanc. I know that we started off talking about that, but if you guys have any other questions, we'll stick around for a few more minutes here and answer those. Mallory, how far in advance did you start planning and booking refugios? So started about 6 months in advance. For the Italian refugios, I'd start like 8 to 10 months in advance. Those book up very quickly and are choke points on the trail. So yeah, definitely start earlier for the Italian spots. And Ricardo asks, if you had to switch to another mountain sport, what would it be? I don't know if I don't. Your question's a little bit interesting because backpacking, I know that's what you guys see a lot on this channel. That's mostly what you see on this channel. But I also do a ton of other mountain sports. I trail run, I backcountry ski, I downhill ski. I'm in the mountains a lot. Go out, do a little bit of rock climbing, but not a ton. So yeah, I'm in the mountains quite a bit already. So I think if there is a sport, I would love to be able to rock climb casually. I find that rock climbing is one of those sports that you need to do often in order to kind of keep your fitness level up to a point where it's not a big struggle every time you want to do it. So I'd love to be able to rock climb like once a month instead of having to do it like a couple times a week in order to keep the fitness level up to do it well. Benji, would you consider becoming a decathlon ambassador? I've been I haven't become an ambassador for any company. I've been asked a couple times, but I am just trying to avoid that. Like, I love having good relationships with companies, and I have a lot of good relationships, and Decathlon's one of those, and I like to keep that just kind of more at like an arm's length so that I don't feel any obligation to give them good reviews for a piece of gear. I just like to be able to keep it honest and not have any perceived bias. Even if I was an ambassador, I'm sure I'd still tell it how it is, but it would just be a little bit more pressure. Mallory, what car do you drive? I drive a 2005 Subaru Outback that has more duct tape than any car should have keeping it together. It also, the muffler fell off the other day, so yeah. Become a channel member so that I can afford a car once this one dies very soon here. Yeah, my car is it's a great car. I love the Subaru. It does really well in the winter, all-wheel drive. I can fit a ton of stuff in it, but it's falling apart. I want it to last long enough until electric cars have the range that I want for being able to go to the mountains and back safely in the wintertime. Just going through the questions here. Stephen, how far in advance did you book the West Coast Trail? I booked it the day that booking opened. I do that for all of my Canadian hikes. J3 Hikes, are you ever going to check out hammock camping? Yeah, at some point I'll hammock camp, I think. I'm really interested in one of the kits that Hammock Gear has. It seems just like a really easy way to get into hammock camping, so I might try that out. Maybe this winter, because I think hammock camping is awesome in the wintertime. Just with how you can kind of set up without having to stomp down snow or anything. Tim, what do you use to record and all that? I'm gonna do a question and answer about my filming gear and how I record on trail as a channel member video. So keep an eye out for that, channel members, over the next probably a couple weeks here. I know you guys gave a lot of questions, the channel members, and I'm gonna kind of treat them as individual Q&As where I'll talk about those just as separate videos just for you guys. Chuck, how much backtracking did you have to do for all those shots? So I get this question a lot when I'm filming trips. in order to get the shots. And really, it probably adds about 8 to 10 seconds every time I have to backtrack for a shot. So it doesn't add up too much. Would you rather have a lot of different gear to have different setups, or less gear that can cover a range of conditions? So I'm lucky in that I have a lot of gear that I can take for very specific scenarios, and I like to have that option. I like to cater the gear for the types of conditions that I'm going in. But if I didn't have that, then I would like to have just a few pieces of gear that covered a range. Eddie, when can we expect a collaboration video with you and Devin and Big Balla Dan Becker? I'd love to take Dan Becker winter camping in Canada, and I'd love to get down to Utah and have Devin take me on some of his famous Utah desert or canyon trips, because he goes to some pretty cool places, and it's an area that I've started dabbling a little bit, but I haven't gotten down there too much. So yeah, I'd love to go on a trip with both those guys. They're great guys. I talk with both of them quite a bit. Mallory, yeah. Sean, what does the tour cost? So we covered a lot of stuff at the beginning about the tour, and yeah, it can range anywhere from about $500 US or euros up to like $1,500, depending on how much camping, refugios you do, or eating out. Sarah, do you plan on live streaming the wedding? Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We need to figure out a way to pay for it. So maybe we'll live stream the wedding and hope for some super chats. Michael, how did the Exped Ultra go? What are your thoughts so far? So the Exped Ultra is a new sleeping pad. I used it on the Tour de Mont Blanc. It was the version that had an R value of 3, and I found it quite warm, especially for the conditions we were out in. It's pretty comfortable. It works well. I would not get the Mummy version again, because the pad strap of the Trekology pillow doesn't latch onto the top of the Mummy pad really easily, because it narrows too much. So I'd get the square version. But I think I'm going to be trying out the one with an R value of 7 this winter, and I'm expecting good things about it. It's the one that has down inside of it. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, drop them in here. I'll do a couple more, and then we'll sign off if there are any more questions. Thanks everyone for stopping by and watching the series. There's the gearless video's out, so if you do have any specific questions about gear, you can go take a look at that. It was a great trip. We had a lot of fun, and Michael, I'll compare the Etherlite XT and the Neo Air to the Ultra 3R. I need to do there's a lot of good sleeping pads coming out that I need to compare. I need to do a full roundup, as well as tents. I realize that I have probably almost as many tents as Devin with backcountry exposure at this point, and need to do just a big roundup of them. Alex, or Mallory, what kind of dog are we getting? You're gonna have to find out in 2 weeks. 2 weeks we might do a little reveal. Alex, how many socks, underwear, and pants did you all bring? 1 pair of pants for camp, 1 pair of pants for hiking, and then one pair of socks and 1 pair of underwear for a camp, and then 1 pair of socks for hiking, and 1 pair of underwear for hiking. And Z-Muzzy, is blue and orange personal color preference or for safety? Blue is, I just like blue, and a lot of gear is blue, and then the orange is actually for safety. So I used to be an environmental consultant. I was in the field a lot, walking around in random places, and I'd wear orange so that hunters wouldn't shoot me. So a lot of my gear has been orange for that reason. And then the blue and orange just kind of came about. Thanks everybody. That's a very good guess, Mallory, but it's not. Very good guess. That might be a Bernese Mountain Dog might be coming down the road, because they are awesome. I love them. But thanks everybody for coming by. We'll be doing some more live streams down the road, and we'll see you all later.